Hello, I'm Dawn Stallwood, and I'm on the Culture Matters podcast.
Morning, Dawn. It's probably not morning where you
Good
are.
morning.
No, it's
It's the
so
afternoon now, so it's 4 p.m. in the UK.
okay. It is what time is it here? Let me just check. What time is it here actually? It's noon. Yeah, it's noon. All right, let's do this. I never prep a lot. I've got some questions, but I prefer to have a flowing discussion, if that makes any sense. But before we go with that, tell us a little bit more about yourself. Where do you come from? Where are you now? And what would be considered your sort of cultural frame of reference?
Okay, thank you for that. So, Dawn Stallwood, age 51. My background is a corporate commercial lawyer. I've done a lot of mergers and acquisitions, growth work into cross border opportunities, and in particular, working with leaders. I found that over the last 30 years, what I've needed to become very proficient at is finding common ground and a relationship approach with the many different types of leaders I've worked with and their management teams, particularly
Hmm.
when you're running deals or you're helping and supporting management teams as an external advisor. You need to build that permission into the organization that you will
Hmm.
be taken seriously and can be of use. So that's been my background for the last 30 years. In the last 15 years, I've been an independent business owner. I run two businesses. One's a notarial business, so that gives me access to lots of corporates doing international work,
Hmm.
and the other is a consultancy called Floodlight Business. And I would say now that I'm probably more of a leadership counsel than I am a purebred corporate lawyer. So I've
Okay.
morphed a little bit. And in the last 18 months, I've written a book called Beautiful Leadership that offers a personal framework for how you build impact using both qualities and attributes and practices or disciplines. So that will probably lend itself to some of our conversation about why culture
Yes.
matters.
Yeah.
And I'm based in
Yeah.
South London, and that's I have a dog and a husband, and that's about it for now.
In that order, a dog and a husband.
Well, it depends. I mean, first thing in the morning, if I'm downstairs early and the dog comes and says hello to me and shows me lots of love,
Yeah.
then at that moment the dog definitely has won my heart.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, just notice this remark: a dog and a husband. Yeah. Just before we go into it, because I'd like to know more about your book, Beautiful Leadership. With which cultures have you worked, and how did you experience that? I mean, this is a question with a lot of questions. Was one culture more difficult to work with than the other? And that kind
So,
of stuff.
uh, so I found myself in the probably from yes, really from the very beginning. So I started my first role after law school was with a very large aviation group that was international. So they would follow the oil and gas companies around the world in order to ferry fly the personnel to oil and gas rigs. So when
Okay.
I was with them, I was working into cultures in Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, Thailand, Australia,
Mhm.
Greece, Italy, as a youngster, really in my early 20s,
Mhm.
and it was such a blessing because I had early exposure as to we're not all the same, and
Yeah.
it's really important to build empathy and understanding and to listen acutely and to accommodate and flex, be a bit of a chameleon in terms of how you sort of present yourself in different cultures. So that was very early on and very interesting for me. And then some of that activity continued apace. So I've always had cross-border activities. And apart from Antarctica, I've now worked on deals on every continent
Okay.
and been exposed to lots of different cultures where it's been a very enriching experience. Some are definitely more difficult than others. I would say that some are more difficult than others also because of gender. as
Yeah.
well. Maybe less so now than 25, 20 years ago. So yeah, all of that has been a learning experience.
Very quickly, which was an easy culture and which was a more challenging culture?
So I think Turkey is quite a difficult culture.
Uh-huh.
Um, I think Israel, I've had some challenges as
Hmm.
well because of the building of trust between the parties and removing sort of cynicism that might be inferred. So I think those two cultures have been cultures I've had to really think hard about how I can help build the rapport to ensure that the deal goes through and goes through well.
Hmm.
Um, so I think those two would be the two that I've found more challenging for me. It's not that it's that it's a problem per se. It's more that I have to, check
Yeah.
myself and pay attention.
And of
Yeah,
course, it depends also on your culture. I mean, your view on the world is different than my view of the world, being a
of
Dutchman.
course.
So in that,
Yes,
so
and
for me, the Turks could be a lot easier just because I look
yeah,
differently at the world, and that's something that you have to
yeah,
keep into account and or take into account, of course, as well.
you do, and it's also things like um, just because I do it one way. Like for example, as a notary,
Hmm.
uh, how we deal with documents over here in England is not the same how documents are dealt with in Germany.
No.
And how a power of attorney is given in Germany by a company director is not how a power of attorney is given over here
Yeah.
by a UK director. And so it's finding a way of having a conversation. So communication skills are key.
Yeah.
It's having the conversation that helps you explain
Hmm.
why the way they want it done can't work and won't work over here. But at the same time, not discounting what they need and trying to find a middle road. There's a lot of compromise that's needed when you're cross culture.
Yes, and a lot of patience
Yeah.
and a good red wine at the end of the day, or something like that.
Yes,
It,
often. Actually, I think that's a fair comment. I grew up in my profession with face to face,
yeah.
and maybe I'm old fashioned, but I still think that with international transactions, when you're building relationships, there's really no substitute for being able to actually meet someone
Hmm. Yeah.
and at the end of the workday or the end of a transaction cycle, going and having a meal with them and getting to know them a little bit
Yeah.
on a personal level. And
True.
then you can augment it afterwards with Zoom and MS Teams, etc. But I think that the personal touch really helps cross culture.
True. And then typically over a meal. Something
Yes.
that's something we all humans all need. We need food. We need something to drink, be it water or be it a glass of wine. But I think that
Yeah.
unifies cultures more so indeed than even a cultural training, I must say.
And I also think, Chris, that certainly I don't know what your experience has been, but certainly my experience is that I've learned the power of eating with people
Yeah. Yeah, true.
because of the international work that I've done. If I think about the work I've done in India, the work I've done in Israel,
Mhm.
the work I've done, yes, particularly India and Israel, China, eating and almost breaking bread together is actually really powerful,
Yeah,
um,
true.
and and not to be discounted or diminished. I'm not sure over here we're as good at it because it's not given the time it needs or the importance it needs. And
Mhm.
I've certainly learned a lot through the business associates I've had in India and China and Israel and Turkey to help me understand the importance of breaking bread,
Yeah,
essentially.
makes good sense. Nice way of putting it as well.
Mm.
If I can make the bridge, I don't know how yet, but make the bridge to your book. It's right behind you. If you're watching this, by the way, on YouTube. If you're only listening to this on your favorite podcast, then have a look at the book as well. Um, Tell us why the title. What does it mean? Yeah, tell us a little bit more.
Okay, so I turned 50 in 2024, and I decided that I should scratch. A lot of people have said to me, Dawn, you should write a book, and I sort of discounted it. Uh, and then turned 50 and thought, well, actually, maybe I should do this um, for my 50th year as something by way of a legacy. I don't have children, so maybe
Mhm.
I could do something and leave something behind that you know bears out the experience I've had for the last nearly 30 years. And so a book was decided that I would write a book. And 2 years before I decided to write the actual book, I'd been asked to speak at a faith, ethics, and business retreat on the which is a retreat on the intersection of faith, business, theology, and leadership.
Okay.
And I'd been asked to speak on the general theme for that year was beauty in business, and I was asked to speak on beautiful leadership or beautiful leaders and what that looks like. And truth be told, I was very menopausal and had serious brain fog, so remembering things was quite difficult. The policy of the conference organizer was to minimize notes and presentation materials.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way in which I found to remember everything was to basically build two mnemonics. And
Mm-hmm.
so those two mnemonics are beautiful and leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And beautiful express the 9 qualities that I felt help us to be attractive, inspiring, transformational leaders, people that we would wish to follow.
Mm-hmm.
And leadership are the 10 practices or disciplines that help us to build our impact. So beautiful are the qualities and the foundation, and leadership is the practice or the scaffolding. And each letter of each word is one of those qualities or practices.
Mm-hmm.
And that became 19 chapters of the book. And I wrote it because I feel very strongly that we need a breed of leaders who really want to be attractive in the truest, most authentic sense, that they want to be inspirational, that they want to make a difference, that they want to lead with emotional intelligence, and
Mm-hmm.
they want to see what they do as a discipline, that it's a practice rather than a title or a destination. And
Yeah.
so that for me was really important. And it shares some of the story, some of the experiences I've had with leaders and entrepreneurs over the years, offers some insights, maybe some suggestions or stretch about how we can improve some of those qualities
Mm-hmm.
and practices and why they're important. So that's the book, and it's why I decided to write it.
Cool. How much, just connecting two dots together, how much of your intercultural experience or international experience can be found back in the book?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of stories of deals and transactions that do have a cross-border
Uh-huh.
piece to them. I mean, I mean, I can't remember the last time I did a transaction or a deal that didn't have an international element. Gone are the days where my deals, at least, have been UK to UK.
Mm-hmm.
There's nearly always an international dimension, and in most of the businesses that I've helped to grow for clients, again, we've been growing into new markets and new territories. So there's always been an international dimension to my experience.
So over the what you see 20, 30 years you've been doing this?
20, yeah, 29
20
years this year. Yeah.
Yeah. How much more international has the world become from the moment you started till, well, this year, 2026?
Oh, very. I mean, I had the bizarre experience in the very beginning of my career to be almost exclusively international
Mm-hmm.
in the first 2 years. And then I went into a law firm setting in the south of England and London. And I would say for the first 2 or 3 years, you know, 70% of my deals were more UK centric.
Mm-hmm.
But then it radically changed, to be more and more and more international.
Is
Yeah,
that
for
is that
sure.
just is that just a trend, or is this a necessity?
I think that a number of the sectors that I did a particular amount of work in became interesting to external investors, as in
Okay.
external to the UK. So
Mm-hmm.
that resulted in, companies deciding to buy into businesses in certain sectors, whether it was healthcare, um, engineering, communications, travel, tourism, where they wanted to break into the European market, for example, and they wanted an established base, so they would come and buy some of my clients' activities. And then I had clients who were based in the UK and were doing work in Europe, but were realizing that their client base was asking them to do more in Asia and Asia Pac, Australasia. And so
Mm-hmm.
that took me into that world, helping them to build out the right relationships with partners in those geographies.
Okay. So going back to your book then, The
Mm.
Beautiful Leadership, how would this benefit uh, a Brit, an Indian, and a Japanese? How would
So
this
I think
benefit? Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
so I think that certain things are universal, and I think how we show up in terms of our qualities and character, and how we practice leadership is more of a universal conversation. So if I just give you a few sort of sneaky previews into the book,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Right.
in Beautiful, the first five letters of Beautiful are B is for brave, E is for empathy, A is for authenticity, U is for unpretentiousness or being humble and uplifting, and T is for transparency.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are universal traits that we should all aspire to as a leader, regardless of where we might find ourselves placed in location terms. And similarly, on the leadership side, first four or five letters, L is listen to learn, E is execute to earn respect, A is practice adaptation, and D is practice difficulty. And again, you can see that all of those and the other letters in the framework
Mm.
are important to a leader, regardless of where they're located. So there'll be cultural nuances on all of it, of course, but
Well, yeah.
fundamentally,
I'm going to be devil's advocate here because what is beautiful for one is not beautiful for the other. What is respect for one is not respect for the other. Um, so, I mean, you cannot say this is respect for the UK, and so for you in an actual thing in Iran, this is the same respect for you, and they just see respect as a very different thing. So how
no,
how do you
and
deal with that then?
that's a fair comment, and that's why in the framework, when we talk about listening,
Hmm.
it's not purely listening. So in the book, when you read that chapter, it's listen to learn.
Hmm.
So it's about actually taking the time to understand.
Hmm.
If you're listening to speak or listening to reply, then you're not really learning anything at all.
No.
But if you're listening to learn, then you will get an opportunity to understand the nuances of what respect means to one person compared to how respect is viewed by somebody else.
Mhm.
But it takes empathy, and it takes adaptability, and it takes a willingness to listen in order to learn. That's why I think the framework has should have universal appeal, because it creates the space, Chris, to enable people to actually not make assumptions. So easy when you're cross culture to make assumptions and fall into a pothole
Sure. Not,
in
oh no,
relationship
not
terms.
that Indian again. No, not these Indians again. And so the
You
stage
know,
is already set, and getting over that in order to actually see, okay, you're a different person. My culture is different from yours. So how do we deal with this? I think that's important to realize as
yeah.
well.
Well, I think the power of collaboration and being unified doesn't mean that we have to have exactly the same perspective. Doesn't mean we have to agree,
Mm.
but it means that we seek to find common ground. And I think you can always do that. That there's a way of finding common ground. I've not yet failed to find common ground on a
Mhm.
deal, even in the most protracted or difficult of deals. You can find a way to have some common ground. So I think that's the commitment, is the commitment to basically seek to collaborate,
Mhm.
to find that common ground, um, and also be prepared to be surprised. So, there are elements about other people's cultures that I have, found really useful and I have adopted into my way of thinking.
Mhm.
Had I not been exposed to some of that, I wouldn't have. So if you approach it from a teachable spirit perspective, that you're open-minded, then I think you can sort of overcome the differences.
Yeah, you can, but it does take great effort. That's what I.
Yes, it does.
Something that I got from your LinkedIn profile, and I'm curious how that would link in to your to this book we're talking about, is I read you also have been a chief integrity officer. How
Yeah,
how
so
does
it's a
that, is that a connection? Is there a connection?
yes, there's definitely a connection. So uh, a few of my clients over the years have been quite keen to have me alongside them as what could best be described as a corporate conscience or
Mhm.
a facilitator. Sometimes self-interest can get in the way, particularly in teams and boards and shareholders. So
Mhm.
having somebody who's truly independent with no self-interest at play, other than receiving fees for work done, is able to speak truth to power in a way that sometimes you feel unable to do if you're in a different role in an organization. So the corporate conscience or chief integrity officer role was sort of born out of some of those requests from clients. And I really like the word integrity. So
Hmm.
integrity, um, often people attach moral values to it, or doing the right thing, codes of conduct, etc.
Yeah.
Gets linked often into business. It gets linked often into anti-money laundering and anti-bribery and corruption.
Hmm.
But the root word, so the word integrity, the root of the word from the Latin is a word called integer,
Hmm.
and integer means a state of undivided whole or completeness. And so when you look at the word in that context and you think about boards and management teams and senior leadership teams, collaborations, consortiums, you can ask the question, is your team or are you operating with integrity? Often you get a short intake of breath because they're offended initially because they assume you're saying that they're operating in a way that's not, doing the right thing, not
Hmm.
morally good, etc. And that's not what I'm getting at. When I use the word integrity in my role, it's, are you deploying your resources, including your people, in a way where you are undivided and connected in a complete whole? So if you've got uncollaborative behaviors, self-interest, politics, turf wars, if you've got any of that sitting inside the organization, the reality is you're not operating fully with integrity because you're not complete. And so that's why I use the word integrity in that job title, if you like, because
Hmm.
it really helps the discussion with leaders, with chairs, to try to diagnose the problem that they may be facing in their organization,
Hmm.
because it simply could be a lack of integrity from a completeness or wholeness
Yeah.
perspective. So that's the link. That's your
Yeah,
bridge.
yeah, so I'm trying to process what you say. Yeah. Talking about process and making process, I try to keep my podcast recordings around 30 minutes, and we're heading towards that. So I'd like to ask you my two last questions,
Sure.
which is the one but last question is, give us three tips if you can about or how to become more culturally competent from your own experience.
So three tips would be, I'm actually going to share one tip
Yeah.
from a lady called Lakshmi, who I employed many years ago as a cross-cultural trainer for me when I was doing so much work in the Far East.
Yeah.
And she said to me, make sure that you've got the right set of hearing aids and the right set of contact lenses in your eyes when you are looking at other cultures. Because if you just come at it from your own perspective of what you know in terms of what you hear and what you see, you will end up with blind spots
Mm.
and you won't hear the culture. So for me, it's about tuning in and being very, very observant and just checking yourself. And I've never forgotten that advice.
That's
Have
a
I got
good.
the right ears on and have I got the right eyes
Hmm.
to see? So that would be my that's one tip I think that
That's cool.
stands the
Yeah.
test of time.
You got more?
No, I'm good. I'm actually going to leave it at that one because I
Okay,
think
that's good.
that's probably the most potent is
Yeah,
ears
yeah.
and eyes. Yeah.
That's an interesting one. I've never heard a phrase like that either.
Mm.
The last question, Don, then would be if people would like to get in touch with you or are interested in your book, how do they do that? On your LinkedIn profile, there are a couple of websites. I've seen that. But what is the best channel to get in touch with you?
So LinkedIn is always very good, and make sure they reference you, Chris, and the podcast so that I can remember where we're associated. And if they're interested in getting hold of the book,
Yeah.
they can head to thebeautifulleader.com if they're based in the UK. I'll be glad to sign a copy and give a personal note in the book. If you're
Hmm.
international and you'd like the book, then just head to Amazon. And again, the book is available in hardback and paperback. Audible will be coming later on this year.
Great. Okay. So LinkedIn we have, and the website, it's the beautiful leader, right?
It's
.com. Yeah, yeah,
thebeautifulleader.com. Yeah.
that's important. Otherwise you miss that. All right. Well, Don, thank you so much for your time. Um, I,
And to
I
you.
I enjoyed the conversation, and I'm pretty sure we'll bump into each other in the future.
I do hope so. Thanks very much indeed, Chris.